Hi, everyone. I see that the people joining the number is slowing down. So I think we'll get started. Hi, I'm Dr. Kathy Belton, and I'm the director of the Injury Prevention Center in the School of Public Health at the University of Alberta. On behalf of the center and our program Finding Balance and Primary Care Alberta Provincial Injury Prevention, I would like to welcome you to the 2025 Annual Practitioners Day. This is the 12th year that we have held this event, and we are pleased to have over 300 people registered from across Canada and internationally for this learning opportunity. I would like to acknowledge the Alberta Blue Cross as our Fall Prevention Month partner and thank them for their support. Thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the webinar.
Thanks, Kathy. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Shelley Dallas Smith, Finding Balance Project Coordinator from the Injury Prevention Center, and I will be your host for today. I would just like to extend a warm thank you to our Practitioners Day committee members from the Injury Prevention Center, Dr. Kathy Belton, our director, and Marla Zubiak, our admin support, and from Primary Care Alberta, the Provincial Injury Prevention Program, Leslie Munson, manager, and Kelsey Walper, health promotion facilitator. We are very pleased to offer you this excellent learning opportunity today with Dr. Melanie Farlie, who has kindly joined us from Melbourne, Australia. So she's there for a day ahead of us and very early in the morning. I think it's 6 a.m. I'd just like to invite Kelsey to deliver the land acknowledgement before we get started.
Thank you, Shelley, and it's my honor to provide the land acknowledgement today. So as we gather here virtually, I would just like to begin today by acknowledging that for many of us, our work takes place on historical and contemporary Indigenous lands, including the territories of Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8, and the homeland of the Otimpimswak Métis government of the Métis Nation within Alberta, and the 8 Métis settlements. We also acknowledge the many Indigenous communities that have been forged in urban centers across Alberta. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories, and we acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past. We dedicate ourselves to moving forward together with Indigenous communities in a spirit of respect, reconciliation, collaboration, and healing. I'm attending today's webinar from the southern part of Alberta, which is the traditional meeting place and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Blackfoot, Stoney Nakoda, Tsuut'ina, Inuit, and Métis peoples identified in Treaty 7, and the Otimpimswak Métis government of the Métis Nation within Alberta. I'm grateful for the opportunity to live and work on these beautiful lands, which the Indigenous peoples have cared for generations. I am committed to continuing to listen, learn, and further understand both the historical and current impacts of colonialism, reflecting on my position of privilege and taking meaningful action as an ally to challenge ongoing systems of oppression. I'll turn it back over to you, Shelley. I think you're muted.
Thank you. I didn't click that quite quick enough. So the webinar will be recorded, your microphone will be muted, and your camera will be disabled for the entire webinar. So through the chat function, you'll be able to ask any of the technical questions that you might have, those kinds of issues. And halfway and post-presentation, there will be time for questions, and please use the Q&A function for those questions, and Kelsey and I will be facilitating that section. And there will also be a survey posted in the chat at the end of the webinar. So it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Melanie Farlie. She is an APA titled research physiotherapist and clinician researcher with over 2 decades of combined experience in clinical practice and research. She is a senior lecturer in the Department of Physiotherapy and a research fellow in the Monash Center for Scholarship in Health Education at Monash University. Dr. Farlie's PhD focused on balance exercise prescription, leading to the development and validation of the balance intensity scale, the first objective measure of balance exercise intensity. She now leads the balance exercise research group at Monash University, advancing research into balance training and its clinical applications. In addition to her research leadership, Dr. Farlie serves as the Education Officer on the board of the International Association of Physiotherapists, working with older people, and as an associate editor for the Journal of Physical Therapy Education. Welcome, Melanie, and you may now share your presentation with us.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. And I am very pleased to be meeting with you all. Yes, it is already Thursday here, and Thursday's looking good. So it's going to be nice to have the time with you. The presentation this morning is, or this afternoon for you, I really want it to be something that you walk away with from, and the next time that you're working with someone doing balance exercises, you've got something quite practical to take away. So that's my goal for this session today, and hopefully we can achieve that for you. My starting point is, after that lovely land acknowledgement that you have just provided, is to also provide my own acknowledgement. So here in Australia, we acknowledge that we have no treaty with our First Nations people, but we acknowledge those people that have lived and cared for this land over many, many thousands of years. We pay our respects to elders past and present. The lands that the Monash University campus is on are the lands of the people of the Kulin Nations. I live on the land of the people of the Bunurong Nation, and I grew up on the lands of the people of the Yorta Yorta Nation. At Monash University, we acknowledge that all of our campuses sit on unceded land, and we work with the First Nations people towards recognition and treaty in all that we do. I'd also like to acknowledge that this piece of work that I'm sharing with you today is not just work that I've achieved by myself. It's actually been a really large collaboration from a number of people, both in Australia and internationally. You'll see there on the screen some of the core members of the Balance Exercise Research Group at Monash University, and then some of our national and international collaborators who are part of the Balance Intensity Network. So researchers who are also looking at the issue of balance intensity from lots of different angles. So I acknowledge all of their contributions as well. Today we'll be trying to achieve the following objectives, which is really around giving you the skills to be able to describe the principles of balance exercise prescription in relation to this variable of intensity, to be able to apply the balance intensity scale to the rating of some balance exercises, and to be able to interpret and improve the accuracy and consistency of your ratings based on some practical feedback sessions that we have that will come after the break. I'd also like you to sort of reflect on what you're learning today and develop an action plan for how you might put this learning into practice after the workshop. So this is a session agenda, which I've put in terms of your time zone rather than mine. So I hope I have the timing right. But we've got sort of another 40 minutes or so now with some introductory information. Then there'll be a break, and then some practical applications with some video review after the break. There is time for questions throughout. I'm going to have a couple of pause points in the presentation where I'll just check in with the moderating team to see if there's any sort of major confusions that need to be clarified. But then we'll sort of have these formal question breaks as we go as well. So this is a time where I'm not literally going to hand the microphone over to you, but I would like you to just, for a moment, if you have a piece of paper, a pen, a note app on your phone, whatever you have nearby, just thinking about, what was it that motivated you to turn up today? What was it that you really wanted to take away with you from this session today? And then just as something to refer to back at the end, just to check in to see did you actually get what you came for? It's possible that what you write down now isn't something that gets addressed as I was talking, but it might actually be something that prompts a question in the Q&A period if you don't think I've addressed that particular aspect for you. So let's get going by looking at what balance exercise is and the sort of an introduction to the balance intensity scale. So the reason why I got interested in balance exercise intensity and sort of measuring and exploring that construct is that as I was a practicing clinician, I worked in geriatric rehabilitation. I worked primarily with people sort of 50 and over with quite traumatic orthopedic injuries as the result of low impact falls or falls from height, like often falls from ladders would be the most common fall from height. But those working how to prevent those falls is really where I was first interested. Then when we look at the balance exercise research, it was really the 1970s when the first papers that were published that explained that falls really weren't an inevitable part of aging, that maybe there was something that we could do about it. But then we've really had 50 years of research since then where we're still doing new randomized controlled trials of balance exercise interventions and other interventions to prevent falls. But despite that effort, the problem of fall rates and fall-related hospitalization continues to increase worldwide. I've got some graphs here that are sort of showing the impact of falls on disability-adjusted life years in Australia, where it's right up the top, and it's the same globally as well. So of all of the things that affect people's quality of life years, falls is one of the highest. And so we really need to be doing something different if we want to try and impact this problem of falls. And we think that sort of doing something about the quality of our balance exercise prescribing might be part of that answer. We have this excellent resource that was published in 2022 now, which is the World Fall Guideline on Falls Prevention. And so this is a very long document, but this is kind of the key picture from the document if you're not familiar with it. Essentially bringing together as much evidence as possible around falls prevention from all the different dimensions, risk reduction as well as treatment and interventions. A very large international panel of experts sort of worked on trying to distill all of that. And one of the things they came up with was this algorithm. A really important part of the algorithm was recognizing that opportunistic case finding was really important. People don't report falls. People don't necessarily mention falls when they see a health professional. And so all of us actually asking everyone that we come into contact with if they've had falls is a really a key learning from this process. One of the other things is that this guidelines confirmed that balance exercise is an effective intervention for falls prevention, and there's a sort of guidance around who needs to do how much exercise when based on risk profiles. Essentially everybody does, but the higher your risk, the more specific some of the recommendations are. However, when it comes to looking at the intensity level, so the guidelines say exercise should be challenging to be effective and tailored to be progressively challenging. But when you look at the guidelines, and then this is the American Geriatric Society response to the guidelines, I've just sort of highlighted there all of the different elements that sort of talk about exercise. And when you go deeper and try and sort of work out, but how intense should that be, and how do you judge that? There's things like here where it says to go to a particular national Centre of Information for Care of Older Adults to sort of look at the guidance around the exercise. And when you type in intensity, there's actually no results. So this this resource that they're pointing to is silent. Equally, within this own document, there's all of these different terms that are used around sort of moderate and moderate to high and tailored and progressing, but it's not necessarily telling you how much is that. So that's kind of where the research evidence is at. When we think about it from a practice point of view, if you are all involved in balance exercise, I'm sure that this sort of conundrum is something that you have some familiarity with, in that this evidence tells us that exercise does need to be challenging if it's going to change people's balance ability and prevent falls. But balance exercise can be a higher risk, particularly if people are inadequately supported or unsupervised. If they're trying to do something that's beyond their capabilities, they can fall, and those falls can have adverse outcomes depending on the person and the circumstances of the fall. But if we're not challenging people when we're working with them, or if an individual's doing a program that's not challenging for them, then we also know that it's not going to be effective. And so we've got exercises, the people, whoever's doing their exercise, how do they know how challenging things are for them? And then those of us that might be in that more supervisory capacity, whether we're health professionals, prescribing exercise, fitness leaders, if we're supervising group classes, individual training, how can we tell how challenging things are, so that we're not too challenging, that we're putting people at risk, but we're not so conservative that we're not actually being effective? How we make all of these decisions is another area of research. This diagram comes from a paper that was published back in 2012, and this is one of the preliminary papers that sort of fed into my research. So my supervisor, Terry Haynes, he was an author on this paper, and it sort of helped with the genesis of the balance intensity scale work. But essentially, this was a study where they went and talked to a large number of physiotherapists who worked in falls and balance clinics. So they did falls and balance assessments and intervention prescriptions all day, every day, and asked them, how do you make decisions about exercise and what exercises you prescribe? And so the concept map sort of shows a number of different factors that were in play, but ultimately they said, safety is always my fallback thing. So if in doubt, I always make something a bit easier, because I don't want it to be unsafe. So it's really a tricky space to navigate. And so that's where we hope now, with this new work that we've done, that people have a bit more clarity with what they're doing. So all of the work related to the balance intensity scale was grounded in the specificity principle, which is essentially an exercise science. If you want to achieve an outcome in a physiological system, then the exercise needs to target that physiological system. Balance training is a little more, musculoskeletal aerobic exercise, they don't only just affect the muscles and the heart, but balance training does have a higher layer of complexity when it comes to the multiple physiological systems that it does affect, and are needed to control it, as well as the interplay with cardiovascular, musculoskeletal health. But primarily, when we're looking at how to manipulate exercises to make them more or less challenging, we're usually tapping into the vestibular, the visual, or the somatosensory system. The other thing that can make this space complicated is that there are lots of subtypes of balance exercises. And so depending on what's happening with people's balance control system, different types of balance exercises might be the ones that are more or less challenging for them. So we need to think about the type of exercise when we're tailoring exercise and working with intensity. We've got our working definitions here that we use in our research group, which is basically thinking about balance exercises that are static and anticipatory. So exercises where you might move a foot but not take multiple steps. Dynamic anticipatory exercise where you're moving maybe in single direction or multiple directions, where again, you're anticipating the challenges that are coming in your path, but you're still needing to use dynamic balance control. And then the third type is the reactive balance training, where you have an unexpected perturbation that you need to react to and recover your balance and try to prevent falling. So within this landscape, we've got lots of different variables that we're trying to manage. And that's probably one of the things that the trickiest thing of working out how to get balance exercise training right is trying to control as many of these exercise prescribing variables to then manipulate the one that you're interested in. So if we think about all of these different types of balance exercise, overlaid on that, they can be varying intensities. You can have sort of low to high intensity exercises in all of these different categories. So we come back to the FIT model. There are other exercise prescribing models, but the FIT is the one that's most commonly used in the literature. So that's the one that we use to sort of talk about this issue. From that World Fold guideline, the recommendation is to accumulate up to 3 hours a week of exercise that involves some kind of balance challenge, which is a lot of exercise, given that we know here in Australia, 25% of Australians meet the general physical activity guidelines, which is 150 minutes a week of aerobic exercise and 2 sessions a week of strength training. If you add in this 3 hours of exercise that involves balance challenge, that's we're getting onto a full-time job with exercise, but we can talk about that a bit more. 3 sessions a week is recommended, group or home-based, and so it could be a hybrid form of doing some in supervised and some home-based. That doesn't seem to have an impact, and that the type of exercise would be tailored. So depending on which balance performance system is most impacted for an individual, tailoring the balance to that type of problem work, and it can be multiple. And then, as we know, we've got all of these different kind of representations of what intensity might be, including things like using the Borg scale, which is actually a rating of aerobic intensity, aerobic effort, and is not it is not the same as balance exercise intensity. So I'm going to just pause there and just see, check in with my moderators to make sure that there's no sort of big questions that need to be addressed before I go on.
Melanie, there's this one comment from they're watching together as a group in a room, and they're
Yes.
having a little bit of trouble hearing you, although at an individual level, you're coming across loud and clear. So I'm not sure if you're able to increase anything there or just.
Possibly. Let me just see that my microphone is as loud as it can be. We don't need to see all of that. Down here, this one. That just yeah. Other than making it super loud for myself, I think that's the best I can do. Has that changed anything?
No. And one other person just commented that they're having a little bit trouble hearing too. So if you're able to speak a little bit louder, that would probably suffice.
Yeah. And that might just be me trying not to wake up the house.
And
so I'll just talk louder.
Yeah, sorry about that. There's a couple comments here in the Q&A. Does time play a role in 6 months compared to 1 year?
Yes.
And,
so, yep. Sorry, you've asked the questions, then I'll answer them.
Okay, that's the first question there. And then the other question is, can some exercises be completed in sitting, or do the exercises have to be weight-bearing exercises? I'm specifically thinking of clients with very poor balance.
Yeah. So with the time, so the recommendations are that a program go for at least 12 weeks, but ongoing is preferable. So like it's like a lifespan approach to programming. The reason for that is that a 12-week program, over another 12 weeks, you'll be the um, the detraining is basically it's undone all of the good work. So a 12-week program to get people up to a certain level, but then some kind of maintenance exercise is recommended for maintaining the effect. There is some work looking at reactive balance training programs where people might do intensive reactive balance training. So that's a training where you come and do the unexpected slips and trips. And then if they come back and they do one session sort of every 3 months, it kind of maintains the effect. But for regular sort of community balance exercise training where you're not doing that high-powered stuff, 12 weeks to build up capacity, and then ongoing in some way, if possible, is a recommendation. For the second question, which was about, now I've forgotten.
That's okay. I'll just repeat it. Can some exercises be completed in sitting, or do
Oh,
the
yes, the
exercise?
sitting
Yeah,
question. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So this comes to the specificity thing. So if you're looking for someone to improve their balance in standing, then they really do need to practice the exercises in standing. However, there are ways to build up to that. And so it might be then you need to have an assessment of what is it that's making it difficult for that person to stand unsupported, and can something be done to help with that? It might be that they exercise in standing with support to start with, like holding onto a bench or a bar, or environmental support, and working on things where that support gradually gets taken away. But it might mean that they also need to be doing that in conjunction with some kind of focused strength training program. It really does depend on why they're having difficulty standing unsupported. But I think that principle of, if you want someone's if you want someone's balance to improve in standing, then there needs to be some problem solving around how can we get that person on their feet for their training. But it might be something that you need sort of a clinical expert informing that. All right, shall we go on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And we're at past, so we're good for time. Okay. So there are some different options for measuring balance challenge now. There's the balance intensity scale, which is the one that I'm going to be talking about primarily in today's presentation. But there are some others. So we have the balance intensity scale has been translated into Thai. That translation has worked, but it's still to be published. That's being presented at the Falls Prevention conference in Sydney at the end of this year. But there's also another scale called the rating of perceived stability. So the rating of perceived stability is it's similar, but it's not the same as the balance intensity scale, because it's asking people how stable they feel, which is a little bit different to how hard did you work to maintain your balance during exercise, which is what the balance intensity scale asks. However, it has been validated for use in both laboratory and clinical settings. So the big thing that you'll notice with the who is the rater is probably the biggest point of difference with the different scales. Somehow the modified RPS has got a clinician tick, and that's not actually the case. All of the instruments other than balance intensity scale so far are all from the perspective of the person doing the exercise, so self-rated. It's just the balance intensity scale that has a clinician rated one. So I'm not quite sure why that tick ended up in the second last line. I need to correct that slide. The other thing is that all the different scales have been developed for with different populations, and so all of them have been really tested with non-clinical populations. Some of them have been developed with younger adults only. Some have been developed with younger and older adults, and then there's just the clinical population. There's just not many. So just when you're using instruments and scales, just having a look at how they've been developed and who they've been developed for is an important part of that choice. The other thing is that the different types of balance exercises that these scales have been validated with vary as well. And so all of them have been sort of tested with people doing those static exercises, those exercises sort of balancing, standing in place, but not all with more dynamic and reactive balance training. So for a clinician or an outside observer rating, the balance intensity scale is the only option that we're aware of at the moment. As far as clinical populations, older adults, and people doing static, dynamic, and reactive balance exercise, the balance intensity scale and the rating of perceived stability are the two that sort of meet that brief at the moment. Now, although I'm not going to be talking about the rating of perceived stability in this presentation, this is what the rating of perceived stability looks like. And Debbie Espy is a collaborator of mine. She's in the Balance Intensity Network and a valued colleague, and we are now doing some really interesting work together. But if you're interested in the rating of perceived stability, that is what that looks like. So let's talk about the balance intensity scale, which is sort of where my my sort of primary knowledge lies, and just sort of talk a bit more about what it is and how it works, and how it might be used when you're sort of out in the field working with someone who's doing some balance. So the first thing that we needed to sort of get our heads around doing this work was actually trying to define what is this thing that is called balance intensity. Strength training intensity, aerobic intensity, they're fairly familiar constructs. The research for those have been sort of done in the 40s and the 60s. So it's, you know, we're sort of 60 years behind with this. When we went looking to sort of find a really helpful and clear definition of balance exercise intensity, we didn't find something that suited, so we went through a process of defining that. In simple terms, balance intensity is how challenging a balance task is for someone, and that's based on how difficult the task is and how good their balance skills are. So up till now, I've sort of been talking about the balance control system and the different neurological musculoskeletal systems that go into someone maintaining their balance. And we've talked about what task variables there might be, like the static, the dynamic, the reactive, and how we might manipulate the proprioceptive, the neuromuscular system, the visual system to modify the difficulty of a task. So there's all of that stuff that people are usually really good at understanding. For this individual, how do I make the task harder? But the part that's missing is, so how do we quantify how hard? What is the intensity? So let's have a look at that. So just from a concept, so if I've broken it down into just conceptually an exercise that was low, medium, and high intensity. In the case of falls and balance work, and when you're working on balance exercise, too intense can lead to a fall. And that's why we have this issue with people being quite conservative and risk averse in balance exercise training, because no one wants that fall to happen. To demonstrate this relationship between task and person to get the intensity, I want you to think about these three simple tasks. So someone who's just standing on the ground, eyes are open, arms comfortably by their side. It's a very simple balance task for people with standing balance. A more complicated task for this individual might be to get them to stand on one leg, so you've narrowed the base of support. And then a more complex task might be asking them to stand on a foam pad, so you've impacted the proprioceptive input into their feet, as well as being on the narrower base of support with standing on one leg. And you've also taken out their visual system by putting an eye mask on, so they can't see. It's on a soft surface and a small thing. So hopefully you will recognize that that's kind of a task progression that would be reasonably common in a balance exercise program. So now I want to imagine person A. They are fit, healthy, community dwelling, regular exercise. They're still doing their 5K fun runs on the weekend, fit and healthy. If I gave that person these exercises to do, just standing there quietly might only take up a very small part of their balance capacity. And so we'd say that's like a 5% intensity out of just, plucking numbers out of the air. Standing on one leg, still relatively low intensity for them. Maybe they've had an ankle sprain in the past and their proprioception's not so great. So once you pop them on the mat with the single leg and the mask, we're starting to get to this point where the task relative to their balance capacity is putting them into that more moderate intensity range for this exercise. Now let's keep the exercises the same, so the tasks aren't changing. But now imagine a person who's quite frail. Maybe this is that person that really struggles to do any, like they really need assistance when they're trying to do their standing exercise program. For that person, the same task might be a moderate level of intensity for them at that simple task. And then when you ask them to stand on one leg, now we're already in the high intensity zone for them because the task hasn't changed, but their balance capability is lower. And then trying to stand on the mat with one leg and their eyes closed is too hard. Like that's beyond their capabilities. And so that's what in that excessive intensity zone. So that's why when people say, can I just make the exercise harder by changing the task? Well, you might be, but are you making that difference for somebody, something that's taking them from a low to a moderate intensity, or are you taking them from something that's a moderate to high intensity? You have to understand the relationship between both the person and the task to measure the intensity. So let's look at how we might see what intensity looks like. We did a study where we looked at a number of people with their treating clinician who knew them very well, and we said, look, can you please give this person an exercise that's really low intensity for them, moderate intensity, high intensity, a bit like that prior picture. Can you, knowing this person, can you give them tasks that will challenge them progressively harder? From analysing all of the data over the various studies and doing a lot of maths, we were able to sort of organise what we saw into different time zones of the exercise performance and where these things happen in a hierarchical order. So this is the time breakdown. So we notice that even before someone starts an exercise, that if something is going to be challenging, there tends to be hesitations that get much longer as the exercise gets more challenging, and people need more than one attempt to get into the starting position as exercises get harder for them. During the exercise, there's a number of things that relate to postural reactions and bracing and breathing changes. So we tend to overshoot and we get excessive actions take place when we're being challenged by a task. And so those sorts of things are markers. And then if we look at the performance of an exercise overall, there's these sort of overall things where from woe to go, they looked unsteady. There might be times that you're needing to say something to someone to keep them going. And there are times when if they're going to successfully complete the exercise, they need a little bit of a physical assistance to keep balance. So you might give them light touch, or they might tap the rail or the table to sort of maintain their balance to be able to keep going. So those little physical assistance signs are markers of intensity as well. So if we think about those markers of intensity and remembering we're trying to line up what is the relationship between the person and the task, we took all of those markers, we created the balance intensity scale, and we tested it with lots of people. We sort of had over 300 exercise performances where we had people rated on this scale, and from that, using mathematical modeling, we were able to sort of identify that as an exercise gets more difficult, there's a reasonably predictable order in which you will see these different markers in practice. And so as an exercise is, super, just standing there quietly, you'll have a bit of ankle sway. So it makes sense that even something low intensity, you'll see some sort of posture reaction. But then as tasks get harder, you start to notice people brace, they look a bit unsteady, they start to hesitate to get going. Then you start to see arm movements, or as it gets, they could be even grabbing as things go on. People tend to hold their breath the harder the thing is, but sometimes people will be more rapid and sort of not hyperventilate, but they'll sort of start increasing their breath rate, but usually holding breath. Then as things get harder, now you also start to see leg movement or stepping. So more than just ankle sway, you might see movement of the legs that are preparatories to step or actual stepping. Then going back to the pre-task phase, once things getting much harder, people actually start to have difficulty getting into position, and they also start to take much longer to get going. People stall in all kinds of ways. They can just stall quietly, they can talk, they can distract, they can sort of comment about things. So there's different, it doesn't really matter. Even just the process of getting into position multiple times, it takes time. So if all of that process takes more than 5 seconds, that seemed to be, that was the threshold between a hesitation that was in more of that low to medium intensity area to something that then became quite high intensity. And then needing to either say something to a person, or they need some sort of physically environmental assistance to keep going with the exercise, that was the indicator that they were really at quite at their highest limit. So the good thing is that from a risk perspective, risk management perspective, things like needing to take multiple attempts to get into position or long hesitations to get going, if we're watching someone and we know, oh, actually, I don't really want this person to be maximally challenged with exercise, you can intervene there and say, actually, let's rethink this, and let's maybe go and look at a different way we might be able to set you up. Alternatively, if you're trying to challenge people and you're not seeing that they're having difficulty getting into the starting position, or they're not needing a bit of time to get going, and you're not needing to be near them or putting things in place to have that environmental assistance, then you know from these principles that you're probably not going to be in that high intensity zone if that's where you wanted to be. So I'm going to show you some videos that have someone that's same person, they're doing a straight line walking activity. Unfortunately, they're going 2 different directions. I apologize for that. But from left to right, they're doing a similar task. They're walking in a straight line. They have the same capability. It's all on the same day. They haven't changed themselves on the day. But this is showing you how by changing the task, we've increased the intensity of the balance challenge for the person. So in the first task where they're just walking over the hurdles and tapping the cone, so they're on a firm surface. There is a little bit of self-perturbation with the cone tapping, but that scores a score of 32 out of 100 on the balance intensity scale, which I'll explain in a minute. And their own rating was 2 out of 5, which is sort of a little effort. Whereas with the mat walk, where they've got less proprioceptive input and they're doing tandem stand, so we've narrowed their base, for them, that's now 51 out of 100. So we've kind of gone from sort of a 30% intensity to a 50% intensity. And they're saying it's quite a lot of effort. They've given it 4 out of 5. With the beam walk, so narrow base of support, we're back on a hard surface, but it's a forced narrow base that they've got less foot contact on the ground. Then they're able to do it, but you can see that they're getting a little bit of assistance from the therapist as to make sure that their loss of balance doesn't get out of control, and they're having some verbal coaching that you can't hear on the tape, but they're kind of like when they come off the beam, they're sort of on the verge of quitting, and the therapist's like, no, keep going, keep going. So that verbal encouragement is what gets those scores. So it's not the most intense exercise for that lady. There were harder things that she could do that got her up to that 100% intensity. But for her, she was saying it was maximal intensity as the exerciser. She actually revised that when she did some of the other things and realized the beam walk wasn't as hard as she thought it could be.
Melanie, there's just a question I think that goes
Yeah.
nicely with
Yes,
the
please.
last screen there, and it was
Yeah.
its relation to barefoot or wearing shoes.
Oh,
And
yes.
does the exercise is it more effective whether you're
Yeah.
wearing with bare feet or with shoes? Does it make a difference
Yeah.
on
So
the balance pad in particular, they were asking?
yeah, it does make a difference because shoes are another surface that you interface. And so in a research context, we would have a decision of whether or not shoes on or off from a perspective of standardizing. But it's really, you kind of need to do a bit of an evaluation of the impact of shoes on that person. So clinically, there might be people that for whatever reason, they're going anywhere in their footwear isn't appropriate. Like maybe they have high risk conditions for their feet, and the shoes play a protective role. And so it's just not an option to be exercising out of shoes. But if you are putting shoes into the mix, you just sort of need to understand what impact they have. So you'd probably keep it consistent for the training session, keep it consistent with the shoes that they're most likely to wear when they're out community ambulating. And then, but yeah, so it's not so much that it's right or wrong to have shoes on or off, but just know that the shoe might change the proprioceptive input, might change. So the same exercise in and out of footwear might be a different challenge level. That's probably the key thing. So you just need to be making a note, like if it's a particular intensity for them in bare feet, it might be less intense in footwear because of the impact of the footwear, or it might be more intense. So you just have to be mindful. It's another variable that might change the impact. Yeah, I hope that's answered that question. Okay, so this is what the exerciser scale looks like, where the lady was rating out of 5, how intense, how hard was she working to keep her balance. And so this is a really important part of the scale development decision making, was we wanted something that exercisers could rate, because one, exercisers being able to rate is important for their involvement in their own healthcare, but also we're not always around with people. And so for people to have something that if they're independently working on their exercise, they have something to reference to. There is also a therapist version of the scale. So this is the one where you get the score out of 100. There are copies of this scale on the Balance Intensity Scale website. They're not the pretty coloured ones at the moment, but we'll get that sorted soon. But the instruments are on the website, and you can freely available to get them. The QR code takes you to where you can get them. And so the therapist version or the observer version, it is broken down into 3 parts, which are related to how we actually observe movement. And I'll take you through what those look like. So in the pre-task phase, we're looking for those pauses and the multiple attempts to get going. And so for each of those things you see, you tick a yes. If you're not sure if you see something, you tick no. In task, you're looking for the stiffening, the leg movements, the arm movements, and the breathing changes. And then overall, you're making a rating of, did they look unsteady at all? And was there any verbal or physical intervention to help them maintain their balance? We have sort of infographic ways of showing this when we're talking to exercises, because exercises do their score out of 5, but they still need to understand, what am I basing that on? And so we have some infographic ways of showing this as well. I'm going to show you a video of what these pre-task elements look like. So in this video,
Okay, for this
so before it starts, so I'm going to show you this video where you're essentially going to see the starting component. There's sort of look for the hesitation that might be there, any attempts to get into the starting position, and any sort of delay. So let's have a look and see what we see on this one.
task, I'm going to get you to walk along the middle of the mat. And while you're doing it, each step, I want you to turn from side to side. Turn your head as you walk along the middle. When you're ready, go.
Okay, so it's really subtle, but I'm going to play it again. You might notice that, you know, she reasonably quickly gets her first foot onto the mat, but then there's this little stop and tap of her toe, which that sort of gets that multiple attempts to start, but it's not a 5-second hesitation. It's a slow hesitation.
Okay. For this task, I'm going to get you to walk along the middle of the mat. And while you're doing it, each step, I want you to turn from side to side. Turn your head as you walk along the middle. When you're ready, go.
So she heads off, but then there's just that little tap. So there would be a tap for that multiple attempts to start, which gives her a slight hesitation. This one is a little bit of a different start.
Okay, you can see the little thing in front of you. When in a moment, I'm going to get you to stand on top of it and then walk along to the end. Try and do it nice and slow so you keep your balance and get all the way to the other end. All right, when you're ready, go.
Okay, so it's quite a longer process of getting going with that one. And if we look at the timing, this is what it's just on the cusp of just over 5 seconds to really get going with the exercise.
Okay, you can see the little thing in front of you. When in a moment, I'm going to get you to stand on top of it and then walk along to the end. Try and do it nice and slow so you keep your balance and get all the way to the other end. All right, when you're ready, go.
All right, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. So she's just over that cusp. All right, so
Okay.
let's look. So we've got these things that happen during the exercise, and I am mindful of the time, but I think we can make up a little bit of time after the break. So during the exercise, we've got all of these different things that we're looking for. So let's see if we can see some of those in these following videos. So we won't do so much stop and review, but essentially sort of start looking for, can I see unsteadiness? Can I see the breathing you can hear on the videos usually? Whether or not you can tell if the therapist is giving them any support, Are you seeing any leg or arm movements that are in excess to what's required for the task? So let's have a look and see if we can see those things in the next couple of videos. So here she's quite smooth. Her arm's a little stiff, but she's moving quite well. You can kind of hear her breathing is relatively even. So remember, this one was sort of in that 30 out of 100 range. This wasn't a particularly challenging type of exercise for her. Let's look at this one. It's a different person. So here already, even before she started, her arms are out to the side. She's got lots of arm movement, and she's lots of movement of her hips and legs. Her feet are moving to readjust. And she's got the therapist needing to just give her a little bit of light touch to keep her going. So that's, even though it's a static exercise, we can sort of see all of those different things happening. So I'm going to just recap that we've got these hierarchy of observable markers that we're looking for just as a prompt. And rather than pause for questions here, because I know we've got sort of question time still coming, I'm just going to now show you 5 videos in order. I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to show you. This is what a 1 out of 5 for an exercise, a low intensity for the therapist observer score looks like. And we're going to go from 1 to 5. And on each video we'll play, and up on the screen there'll be like the little tick sheet of what's in each one. And just have a go and see if you can see things. And then when over the break, we'll let that sort of cogitate, and we'll have a go at actually doing some video readings after the break. So let's have a look at the first one.
Ready.
Okay, go.
So this one, in the interest of time, it's 30 seconds, and he looks very much the same.
Ready.
So just
Okay,
to show
go.
you that one, essentially, all he has is a little bit of ankle sway. So he gets 1 tick on the therapist observer scale. So he's sort of 10 out of 100, very low intensity. And the individual said it was really no effort at all when we asked how hard did they work to keep their balance. It gets more interesting. Let's look at the next level up.
When you're ready, go.
You can see the arms out to the side. There's a bit of a balance reaction, but fairly even and steady.
When you're ready, go.
And so we've got the posture reaction because the arms have moved, the arm movement out, holding them out stiff as the bracing. So that's the 3 points that we've ticked to get 26 out of 100 on the balance intensity scale. But then there's just a little effort from the participant's perspective.
Okay. When you're ready, go.
So this is going to be in the middle. This is a moderate intensity. So for that, you might notice some of these other things are starting to happen. So it was a couple of little steps to get going. And also she's starting to seem unsteady, and you're hearing the heavier breathing. For this person, that was some effort, and we're sort of up to 44 out of 100.
Okay. All right, so when you're ready, go.
So now we've got lots of arm movement, bracing, looking really unsteady. She's needing some verbal encouragement, a little bit of physical assistance. You can
going.
hear the big breath in and out.
Yep.
Steps out to the side to regain her balance. So this is quite a lot of effort for this person. So the therapist version, we do a subjective rating as well. And so I would be saying this is a 4 out of 5, a lot of effort. But for the exerciser, they're telling us we think that's max effort for us. Okay. And it was quite a lot of work to successfully complete that. You hear the big sigh. So then this is the last exercise.
When you're ready, go.
So this is the one that was harder than the beam for this lady. So it's standing on the ball and moving her head up and down.
It's okay, that's okay. See if you can keep going. Get your balance.
So there's lots of verbal
coaching, without me before you move your head
little
again.
bits of physical assistance to help keep going with the exercise. It's taking a lot of effort to keep balance.
If you need to, you can step back as well, okay? You don't have to just rely on a catch.
Yeah. And so we essentially ticked everything for that exercise, and it was definitely maximal effort for the individual. So you can sort of see the spectrum of those different intensity levels. I've got to the point where there's a bit of a pause, but I do know that I'm over time. So I'm going to hand back around how are we going to manage break time, knowing that the portion after we probably will get through quicker than the first portion.
Okay, no, that's no problem. We're flexible for sure. So yeah, this is your Q&A opportunity here. So we'll see what we've got for questions. We've been answering them all along the way has been helpful, I think. So we do have one question here, and it's, is there any consideration of time or distance in completing these dynamic tasks?
I think from a time perspective, so when we've been we're doing some research at the moment where we're getting sort of community living older adults to come in and do some a low intensity training session and a high intensity training session on 2 different occasions, and we're sort of measuring differences in a whole bunch of outcomes between the 2 sessions. In those sessions, I mean, these are sort of fit and healthy individuals. They're masters runners. They're still running 10K, half marathons and things as for fun. We're doing 20 minutes of high intensity exercise over a 40-minute period. And that is plenty. Like, they are done. So I think when you get to those really high, and if you're trying to stay in that sort of 70 plus out of 100 zone, a really fit older adult, like, that 20 minutes over 40 minutes is a workout, and it doesn't seem like there's any point in doing more than that. So that's kind of the maximum, but not everybody is that fit. And so it would be sort of paring it back from there. So I think I would be going for, what intensity are you wanting to train them at? So are you aiming for that really high intensity, in which case they probably can't do as much of it in a session? Are you aiming for that moderate intensity, in which case they might be able to manage more? And I think this is where the kind of the opportunity is if we can do more research where we do have a very well-controlled set known intensity, we might be able to demonstrate that you don't need that 3 hours of balance challenging exercise across a week anymore, because if you do it at really high intensity, maybe you can do it for less time. So I think that's probably the time thing is, you've got to look at capacity of your individual and when you feel like they've done enough balance exercise for them. The distance, again, like sometimes that's really environmental. If you only have a small, if you're in someone's home, the distance is the length of the hallway. But if you're outdoors, it could be longer. So that's probably, and thinking functionally, the distances people need to travel. It's not necessarily from an exercise science perspective, but more an environmental practicality perspective. I hope that's answered that question.
Okay, Kelsey, do you have the next question for Melanie?
You bet. To improve balance, what intensity should we be aiming for? What number on the BIST?
Yes, that is a very good question. It's actually $1 million question. We are trying to get funding to do a really large multi-center dose response trial, but it's yes, it's millions of dollars budget. So we're trying. We don't actually have the answer to give you on that at the moment, and it is why we developed the scale with that intention to get to a point where we would have something that we could actually objectively measure the intensity of training programs to then be able to compare low intensity to moderate intensity, high intensity. With my clinician practitioner hat on, my answer to that question is to start measuring the intensity of the training that you're doing and just see where it's at. From first principles, I would say that low intensity or no intensity exercise is not going to be helping improve balance. From that exercise specificity principle, if you want to improve balance, you need to challenge it. So if you're doing training and your exerciser is telling you, I'm giving that a 1 out of 5, it's no effort at all, or if you're rating it and it's 10 out of 100 or 19 out of 100, that gives you an indication that you're probably not really challenging their balance, and so it's not a balance exercise that's going to be worth sticking with. It might be that if that sort of 70 to 100 out of 100, like that's actually not necessarily feasible in all situations. It might be that you actually need an overhead harness for some populations to be working at that level. It might be frightening for people to try and work at that level. There are different reasons why you may or may not work at that level, but if you've got someone that's fit and robust and keen to challenge themselves, it might be very appropriate. So we think that if you exercise at those higher levels, you'll get a benefit in a lesser amount of time. And that hypothesis comes from reactive balance training programs where for relatively short periods of training, they do get a reasonably good balance performance payoff. The question is whether it prevents falls in the long term. That's probably the less clear thing. So I think sort of clinically somewhere in the middle, so that you're at least at those moderate levels. And when we've done, we did a project with community rehabilitation therapists late last year where we taught them the balance intensity scale and we asked them to use it in their balance exercise program over the 12-week period. And we've just done some analysis of what was the intensity of exercises that they ended up prescribing in those programs. We had the exerciser rating and the clinician rating. And the good news was that like 8% of them were in that bottom 25% range. There was only 8% that were over the 75 out of 100 area, and the vast majority of the exercises were somewhere in the middle. So I think at least a 2, a 3 or 4 if you can get there, a 4 or 5 with people that you're either with them well equipped or they're super confident and robust. So that's really more of a clinical answer than a research answer, because we don't have the research yet.
Okay. All right, thanks. The next question is, what's the correlation between the BIS exerciser and the BIS therapist? Is the correlation impacted by floor or ceiling effects?
Excellent. Okay, so very good question. With the when we did the validation trial of the balance intensity scale, so probably didn't go into this detail, but the therapist scale, the observer scale, you do your 11 ticks, yes or no, and then you convert that score of 11 into the interval score out of 100. The observer also does the same subjective rating as the exerciser from 1 to 5, and that helps to validate their score out of 100. So when we looked at the correlation between the objective tick rating out of 100 and the therapist's subjective rating out of 5, there was excellent correlation between the two. And then also when we looked at the correlation between the score out of 100 and the exercises rating out of 5, that correlation was also good. And then the correlation between the therapist score out of 5 and the exercise score out of 5 was also good to excellent. So they all kind of line up. Everybody sort of, and so that's a practice point that if you are doing your observer rating, whether it's the 5 point, sometimes it's not feasible to get the 100-point score for an exercise, but you can, as an observer, you can always do the 5-point subjective rating yourself. If you're looking at someone and thinking, oh, that's 1 out of 5, no effort at all, and they're telling you that's a 4 out of 5, that's a lot of effort for me, that then becomes a prompt for a conversation about what is it they're not understanding what balance intensity is and what they're meant to be rating, or is it that they've got fear and anxiety or other things that are making them feel like they're really challenged with their balance when physically you can see that they're not challenged. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
The next question is, do you have tips for group facilitation with a variety of levels in the group?
Yeah, this is a really good question, common question. So there are sort of logistics that go on when you're facilitating a group. So one thing that, again, we're sort of looking at how might we be able to do this is this is a very human process, this rating at the moment. It's not really feasible to rate the intensity of multiple people in a group doing their exercises all at the same time. Like, you just can't split your attention that much. However, you can look for the things that are the red flags that, oh, actually, maybe that person, I need to intervene. So if you're running a group exercise and you think you've given everybody something that's sort of a moderate intensity level, but you see someone starting to struggle to get into position for the exercise, or they're not sort of keeping up with the pace, that's a sort of an indicator to you that maybe you need to just intervene and sort of modify what they're doing. So it helps from a group class perspective, from a risk and safety management, where you're not necessarily rating everybody, but you're using this knowledge that as something gets more difficult, people start to need more tries to get into the starting position. But then if you are trying to work with people at different levels, and you are wanting to do even moderately challenging exercise, it might be that you need to use your combination of your strength and balance training that's in a class, because strength is also important for maintaining balance. And so maybe you have people that are doing lower risk seated strength training exercises while you have the capacity to be nearby for somebody that needs that close by supervision for their balance training. The other thing is saying, with the setup and the resources that you have, it's not feasible to have anyone doing high intensity levels of training. And so you just want to keep everyone at that moderate level, which is where everyone can get themselves into position, everyone can get going reasonably quickly, but there's some degree of postural reactions and leg movement, arm movement. If they've got a chair in front of them, they might have some physical assist. So it really does depend a little bit on your setup, but thinking about what's the highest intensity I can get safely in the scenario that I'm working in.
Okay, let's go to break now, and we can save the last couple questions here from when we have our final break time. Now, we're running a little bit behind schedule, so perhaps we should just take a 5-minute break. Is that be okay for people? Take a 5-minute break and come down, and we'll probably, Marla can just, if anybody wants to just sit and do the stretch video, she'll play that because it's 5 minutes, and when that's done, then we will start again.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Join me for a quick 5-minute refresh, a time to move and stretch our bodies, give ourselves a break from sitting in front of that computer. So what we're going to start with are some Join me for a quick 5-minute refresh, a time to move and stretch our bodies, give ourselves a break from sitting in front of that computer. So what we're going to start with are some TIY arm pulses. So bring your arms out in a letter T, pulse them back, bring them into a Y, pulse, I, pulse. And that's where you're going to be. So alternate between T, Y, and I. In each letter here, you're just pulsing your arms back ever so slightly to move through the shoulders and open up through your chest. Again, giving yourself a break from that hunched forward position. Instead, we're opening up with our T, Y, and I's. Let's do 2 more times through. T, Y, I, T, Y, and I. Good. Next on up, a forward hinge with a twist. I want you to bend your knees slightly. Place your hands right above the knees, and from here, you're gonna raise that left arm up towards the ceiling as you twist to the left. Bring that hand down, same thing other side. Raise the right arm up as you twist to the right, and then come back down. And just continue here, alternating side to side. Okay, so again, you're hinged forward about 45 degrees, and you're just alternating, reaching the arms up towards the ceiling, loosening up through your low back with that twist, and still getting a little bit of upper body movement with that arm reach towards the ceiling. Let's go for about 10 more seconds. Twist and twist and stand back up. Now let's move into something for the forearms and the wrist. Extend your arms out in that letter T. Your hands are in fists here, and all you're going to do is alternate between flexing and extending through those wrists. Okay, so flex, extend, flex, and extend. And stay here. And the wrist and the forearm is an area that a lot of us tend to neglect. We don't really take time to stretch this area, even though it needs it from all that computer work and keyboard. We need to stretch through this area. So a few more. Flex and extend. And everyone's a little different. Some people are going to feel this more in the bottom of the forearm, bottom of the wrist. Others are going to feel it more in the top. Regardless, it's going to be beneficial for you. Give me 5 more seconds. 3, 2, and 1. And just shake out those hands a little bit. Next on up, some basic head tilts. All I want to do is tilt that left ear down towards the left shoulder, come back up through center, right ear to right shoulder. And that's where you're going to be, tilting your head side to side. And it's up to you. You're more than welcome to pause for a few seconds on each side before you go to the opposite side, or you can make it more of a continuous movement going from side to side. Listen to your body. Do what you need today, whether it's adding the pause or whether it's a continuous movement. I'm feeling the pause today, so I'm going to pause for a few seconds on each side. Give me about 10 more seconds. Keep tilting that head from one side to the other. Feel that nice stretch in the side of the neck. One more time each side. And then bring your head back up through center. And last movement we're gonna do is a good old windmill, okay? So bring those arms out in a letter T, widen your legs here. And all you're gonna do is bring the opposite hand down towards the opposite foot, stand back up, and same thing. And if you are not able to reach your foot, reach towards your knee or towards your shin. Go down as far as you feel comfortable, okay? But opposite hand towards opposite knee, shin, or toes. Move through the whole body with this last one. We are almost there. One side to the other side. Lengthen through the back of your legs here as you reach that hand down. Maybe 5 more seconds. 3, 2, and 1. And let's wrap on up today's break with 3 inhales and exhales. So inhale those arms up towards the ceiling. Exhale them down towards the floor. 2 more times. Big inhale. And exhale. And last one. Inhale energy. And exhale any fatigue. And there you go. A quick 5 minutes to help you refresh so that you can tackle the rest of your day.
Okay, well, I hope everybody's back and we'll continue forward. Melanie, are you ready?
I'm ready. I enjoyed that. I want to have that in all of my meetings.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
nice, isn't it?
I've never seen the video stretch break in a meeting before, so I'm going to steal that idea. I love it.
Good, good.
Oh, good stretches. Okay, I'm just going to make sure I'm sharing the right slide. There we go. Yeah. So this is the lovely beach near the end of my road. We have some beautiful beaches here. Okay, so this is where we're now going to throw it over to you as the audience to have a go at applying the balance intensity scale using some Zoom polling functions. So I've got 7 videos here, so we'll just sort of see how we're going for time as to whether or not we get through them all. It's not the end of the world if we don't actually cover all of them. So I'll get the team to sort of help with sort of keeping an eye on the time that will work. But what will happen is that we'll play the video and a poll will be launched that will have the 11 different things on the balance intensity scale on it. And so as you watch the video, then you just select which of the items on the scale did you think you saw. So remembering, if you think you definitely saw something, you would select it. If you're unsure, you would just leave it blank. And then when we reshare the poll, we'll get a sense of everybody in the meeting, how consistent are the items that are being ticked. And if there's a lot of variation, or if there's things that a lot of people have chosen that I wouldn't necessarily choose, then we can have a discussion about those. Excuse me. So let's get going with the first video and launching the first poll. And I'll play it a couple of times.
Okay, so the first exercise I'd like to...
I think,
Right.
do you have your polls, Melanie, or do you want Marla to show the polls?
You have the
Oh,
polls.
there it is. There it is.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. And then I think I might need to restart the video.
Ask you to do is standing together, standing with your feet together, touching if you can. So getting your feet pointing forwards, touching together, and then just when you're ready, lift your head up.
Oh yes, and I have to just see, now I'm seeing the poll. This is what happens when I'm we're sort of split, divide and conquer on things. So we're actually not going for the 11 points here. It's really the 5 point subjective rating. So from your perspective, whether or not you think how hard they're working to keep their balance is a 1 through a 5. Sorry about that.
First exercise I'd like to ask you to do is standing together, standing with your feet together, touching if you can. So getting your feet pointing forwards, touching together, and then just when you're ready, lift your head up, and I'm going to put the timer on for 30 seconds. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay, go.
Okay, we didn't keep going for the whole 30 seconds because not much changes. You can start voting, but I'll play it again for anyone who wants to see it again.
Okay, so the first exercise I'd like to ask you to do is standing together, standing with your feet together, touching if you can. So getting your feet pointing forwards, touching together, and then just when you're ready, lift your head up, and I'm going to put the timer on for 30 seconds. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay, go.
All right, I'm going to hand over to the team around seeing how many people have done their voting and what the outcome is.
Okay, so what I'm seeing here is we have 63% no effort at all to maintain balance, and a little effort to maintain balance 31%, and some effort to maintain balance 6%.
Okay, so we're in the all in the same end of the spectrum. But yeah, for this one,
Okay, so the
I
first
would
exercise I'd like to
score
ask you to do is
it.
standing
I'm
together,
just going to turn Sam
standing with your
down.
feet together.
Don't need Sam's explanation. Because he's really just standing there quietly, his arms are quite relaxed by his side. There's maybe a little bit of ankle sway. There's really not a lot there to indicate that there's much effort to maintain balance. So this one, when you're just sort of looking subjectively, I'd be more at that no effort to maintain balance. It was a pretty straightforward task for him. But it might be interesting, like for those of you that were sort of going sort of a little effort or some effort to understand why that might be, and you might have questions that help us understand why you picked those higher ratings. Let's have a look at the next one. And
Melanie,
yep,
just not everybody was able to vote. How do they click on the number, or how does that work?
Yeah, so because I'm not driving the polls, I can't see how many have completed. So the person who's launching the poll should be able to see up the top a bit of an indication of what percentage of participants in the meeting have voted.
Yeah, that's there.
And so then so I know that we had a group of people watching together, like everyone would need their own device. So we probably need to know a little bit more about if they're seeing the poll and not able to click.
Okay, Marla.
Also, if the poll doesn't just launch and appear on your screen, you would have to go down to the bottom menu bar where there's your chat or your Q&A, and there would be a poll. And you should be able to click on that and it would appear.
So it might be finding an extra button.
And yeah, and you just need to move the poll over to the side of your screen so you can still see the video if that's possible.
Yeah. The challenges of Zoom.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Not always.
We'll carry on. Yeah.
All right. Let's have another go with another video. So just keeping your notes to yourself if you've got questions about some of the comments that I'm making as we're talking through these videos. Okay, so here's the next one.
When you're ready, go.
Like it's paused. Yes, it had paused.
Okay, are
Looking
you
very still. Looking
looking
very
for the,
still.
do you want me to read the results we have so far?
Yes, well, we had results on a frozen screen, so they'll be very, I'm expecting they'll be very low, but what have you got?
Okay, so we have the majority are a little effort to maintain balance, kind of 65%, and then some effort to maintain balance, 21%, and no effort, kind of 11%.
Yeah, yes, and when the video is not frozen, yes, I would say that the a little effort to maintain balance. So the things that I'm seeing are around the, just the slight holding of the left arm out a little to the side, a little bit stiff. And she's got a little bit of postural reactions, but she got going really, really quickly. And those sort of markers of those higher levels of intensity aren't there. So that is definitely the sort of the 2 out of 5. Now they're not all in order, so they will be. It's not like it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let's have a look at another one.
When you're ready, go.
The same person, but oh no, that's same person, same video. Here we go. That's better. Video 3, different person.
When you're ready, go. Heel toe. Do your best. Take your time. Well done.
Play that again.
When you're ready, go. Heel toe. Do your best. Take your time. Well done.
Okay, we've
How's that one?
got about 77, 78% with a lot of effort to maintain balance.
Heel
Yeah,
toe.
spot on. I would agree. Like
Do
it's
your
not
best.
the she's able to
Take your
do it,
time.
but there's lots of things going on. The verbal coaching, some physical assistance, the stepping out to the side. So that is good. All right, let's see how we go with our next one.
When you're ready. It's okay. That's great. You're doing very well. Halfway there. Good. All done.
Play that again.
It's okay. That's great.
So we've got about 74% or so with some effort to maintain balance and 22% with a lot of effort to maintain balance.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, and so I think
All done.
this is a really good example of the kind of the limitation of the subjective 5-point scale and the when you get the objective ticking of all of the micro components, because the subjective scale has that, so it's a little bit woolly, and I can see why people would be ticking some or a lot of effort for this particular individual. I can't remember the score out of 100 for this one in particular, but there's definitely things where we're seeing the hesitation, the stiffness. Like she's not, the attempts to get into position really aren't there. She's not needing physical assistance to maintain. So we're definitely not in that high zone. So we're nowhere near 5. And so, yeah, I would probably put 3, but I've seen a lot of these. But the 3 or 4, we sort of say with this objective rating, if a group of people are within 1 point of each other, then we're reasonably happy with that agreement. It's just if we have a group of people where some people are saying 4 and other people are saying 2, then we get a little bit more concerned that people aren't interpreting things the same way. All right, let's have a look at the next one.
When you're ready, go. Oops. Good work. When you're ready, go. Oops. Good work. When you're ready, go.
Okay, so we have about 11% with no effort, a little effort at 65%, some effort at 20%, and about 6% with a lot of effort.
When you're ready, go.
Okay, so we've got a bit more spread with this one. We're sort of not within a point of each other. So this one, I think it's tricky because she's moving. And so then it's kind of working out of the
When you're ready,
movement, what is movement that's about the task and what is movement about the what's movement about the maintaining balance. And so for this particular video, she's actually controlling her movement reasonably well, but there are sort of some indications that her balance is a little bit challenged. So we're kind of more in that 2 and 3 zone for this particular one. There's not lots of assistance needed. There's not a lot of hesitation in what she's doing. She's not particularly stiff. She's moving reasonably comfortably through the exercise. So if you pick 2 or 3, that's sort of more in the zone where we would ordinarily rate this particular one. Okay, there's 2 to go. Before I launch into those, is there any sort of critical questions people need answering at the moment that have come through, or are we okay to keep going and then having a bigger discussion at the end?
I think you can carry on.
Okay. All right, let's see what we think of this one.
go. It's okay. That's okay. Keep going. Terrible. That's okay. That's go. It's okay. That's okay. Keep going. Terrible. That's okay.
Okay,
That's
so we have some effort, 2%, a lot of effort, 18%, and maximal effort to maintain balance at 80%.
Yeah, and I would definitely go with the 80% on this one. So there's lots of different indications that this person's working right at their maximum challenge level. Even just the fact that she can't get all the way across without needing to step off multiple times. You can hear that she's sort of holding her breath. There's big sighs. She's got the arms out to the sides. She's using bracing. She's using stiffness. She's using stepping. Like, it's all of the different markers of intensity. Even getting up onto the beam, it takes her multiple times to get her balance, to get her foot up. It takes longer than sort of just over that 5 seconds. So this is one where there's really not a lot more that you could give this person to make the task any harder for where they are at the moment. And yeah, so this woman's 80, and she's a regular pickleball player, and so sort of being able to kind of maintain her balance, moving in different directions with a bit of speed is what she was after. And so this was a nice practice, an exercise that kind of targeted some of the skills that she wanted to work on. All right, so we've got the last one, just to make sure that everyone's on the ball. Here's our last one.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Time is on now.
Where are we at
Okay.
with that last one?
Okay.
Okay, so we're looking, there's still some voting, but we're looking at primarily around 70% no effort, a little effort, 68%, some effort, 26%.
Yeah. And so for this one, I think it's the reason I include it is because overall it's a relatively easy exercise for this person. And that sort of the big arm movement at the outset is a little bit of a, red herring. It's sort of like, oh, this looks like it's going to be really challenging. But then his arms come down. But there is still signs that it's some effort because he's got the ankle sway. He does hold his arms out to the side. You might remember one of the other ones that we had with him doing earlier. He just looked really comfortable and quite cruisy when he was standing with feet together. But this is obviously more than that. So it's definitely not a 1. And so we're saying it's at least a little effort, depending on what you're seeing in the room, particularly with what's going on with his breathing. If he's holding his breath a lot, then I'd probably say it was a bit like more effort. But somewhere around 2 or 3 would be the case for that particular one. If we were rating.
Okay.
So I think I'll just check in there time-wise. I've got a little bit of information about working with exercises and talking to them about using the scale. But I just want to do a little bit of a time check on how much time there is for this last bit to see how much I
Okay,
expand on any
so
points.
yeah, so if you wrap it up in 4 minutes, that would give us
Okay.
5 minutes for questions. Okay.
All right, so this will be just a really quick run through of a couple of things, which again, we can ask questions to clarify some things. So I think probably one of the really exciting things about the balance intensity scale exercise version is that you can actually ask people what they think about their exercise. And so that's something that I think is a really important part of helping people take ownership of their programs and engage in programs that interest them. So giving them the opportunity to pick the exercise, but be able to rate how much it's challenging their balance to make choices about which exercises might be the best choice for them. We do know from when we talk to lots of older adults that that a common response is, look, really, that stuff's for someone else. That's for my neighbor over there. That's for someone else that I know. It's not for me. However, by bringing in this ability to rate their own exercise training, it gives people an opportunity to sort of see how they are being challenged with exercises that can be quite simple. They can sometimes be surprised how simple an exercise can be challenging, and getting that buy-in can help with adherence. There's a few references here that if you've not seen them before and you're interested in this kind of thing, you might follow up after, but just sort of looking at the beliefs around engaging in balance exercise programs, but also the importance of making our programs fun, and the implication of perceptions of what we deliver and how that fun factor can have an influence. This is some of the insights from the Better for Others Than Me paper that that the Haynes Group published, talking about how the attitude towards the intervention can influence their participation. But I think the thing that's really important when we look at all of this research around barriers to participation in falls prevention interventions, the balance intensity scale is something where I think it really has potential to help, where people feel that they have sort of poor fall efficacy and fear of falling, or a belief that they don't really need balance exercise training, because by using the rating scale, it helps people sort of see how challenged or not challenged they are, and then you can have conversations about engagement. This review is a nice one to go and look at if you're really interested in what might help engage people in balance exercise programs. And I've just highlighted there some of the things where I think the balance intensity scale and the ability of people to rate the intensity of their own training might help with that engagement of people in exercise. There are these two different resources when it comes to talking to exercisers about rating. So there's the infographics that are helpful for helping them understand what are the things that might be indicators that their balance is being challenged. And then there's obviously the scale itself. I'm not going to go through those indicators again, but just to show you that
it's, you know, being workshopped around the how you might talk to people about balance exercise training and what these different effort levels might mean, just to help you as a conversation guide for that. And that is everything that I have. There's a bunch of references that are in the notes, and I will stop sharing my slides.
Okay, well, on behalf of the Injury Prevention Center, like a huge thank you to Melanie for sharing your research and practical application of the balance intensity scale and how it can be incorporated in both clinical and community practice, support older adults in falls prevention. I really like that combination of, you know, the exerciser rating and therapist rating. And I like when you mentioned the one lady, she was a pickleball player and she wanted to be able to play better, and that meant, you know, challenging her balance and making those improvements. So within that context, I think that can be a lot of motivation. So thank you for joining us all the way from Melbourne this morning, and we'll just take 5 minutes, spend the last 5 minutes with I should say this afternoon. We're in the afternoon, you're in the morning. We'll take the last
Yeah.
5 minutes before we close out to take some questions. Kelsey, can I hand that over to you?
Yeah, you bet. One question is, to complete the assessment, does that mat need to be a certain length to be standardized?
Yeah. No, so that's really a really important differentiation between what is assessment and what is training. So when you're doing a balance outcome measure, there's all kind of standard equipment and standard size and standard this. When you're actually rating the intensity of a balance exercise, you set the brief on what the exercise is. Oh, sorry about all the people that had the poor microphone for most of the session. That the balance exercise is what it is. So your balance exercise might be stand with your eyes closed for 30 seconds and then whatever help they need to achieve the 30 seconds. The exercise might be walk from this end of the mat to the other end of the mat, and that's the exercise. So you're kind of looking at the exercise as that particular setup. So it's not to say that a 4-meter mat is a better piece of equipment than 2 4-meter mats. It's really what's happening while they're trying to do the exercise that matters. So you just work with what you have, And then you look at how challenging is the exercise for the person with the task that you've given them with the equipment that you have, which is very different to outcome measurement, where it's all very busy with, is it a 7.5 centimetre step or a 10-metre step? Is it a 3-metre walkway or a 5-metre walkway? This is more about the training program, the exercises, whatever it is that you've given them in that context, and then rating what is the intensity of the exercise for them. So it might be if they only have a 2-metre mat, it's easier, and if they have to maintain it over 8 metres, it's harder for them. But that's more about the task itself rather than the conditions for doing the intensity measurement. I hope that makes sense.
Just as a addition to that, there's another question. What is the width of the beam? Perhaps you can just sort of.
Oh, yes. That is a good question. Do I have a ruler on my desk? I don't know that I do. I'm thinking. So if I put my foot on the beam is slightly narrower than the edges of my foot. So I'm really bad at estimating a visual distance. So it's probably, what would that be? 5 centimeters wide. It's reasonably narrow. It's actually gym activity equipment that's usually used for children, like pediatric gymnastics and activity play. But it's all weight rated for 150 kilos, and so I can put adults on it. But yes, if you look at your pediatric balance activity play equipment suppliers, that's where I get all of my equipment from.
Okay, we only have time for one last question, and it's could the scale be used to evaluate Parkinson-related balance issues?
Yeah, so we have, so again, just keeping in mind that the balance intensity scale is not a measure of balance performance, so it's not going to be able to tell you how, what is the balance performance or balance capabilities of a person. It tells you how intense is a task for a person with a certain capability. So you'll still need to use your usual measures of balance that you would use with a person with Parkinson's. But if you gave that person with Parkinson's an exercise, then you could rate how intense was that exercise for how intense was the balance exercise for the person with Parkinson's. So it tells you about the relationship between the exercise and their balance performance. What measures their balance performance is a different thing. That'd be the mini best test or the Berg balance scale or the clinical test of sensory integration of balance. So balance performance measures are a little different to this, which is the relationship between the task and the person's performance.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, thank you all, and Melanie in particular, for joining us today. And in closing, we wish you all the best with the various initiatives that our attendees have planned this coming November to promote and celebrate Falls Prevention Month. And if you haven't done so already, please register for our November 20th webinar, The Value of Social Supports in Connection to Physical Activity from Research to Practice with Older Adults, as we learn about a University of Calgary research project that explores how fitness professionals and fitness class leaders can support older adults in physical activity participation through social support strategies. And for more information and updates, please subscribe to our e-newsletter, the Balance Bulletin, that you will find on our website. So the survey will now be posted in the chat box, and it's available when you close out of your Zoom window, and it's also sent to you by way of email. So please take a few moments to complete that survey. And thank you again for joining us for Practitioners Day 2025.
Thank you so much for having me. And if you wrote down what you wanted to get out of this session, when you do your evaluation survey, please let us know if you achieved that goal or if there was something that wasn't quite achieved, because it'd be good to know.
Thanks very much, Melanie. Okay, over and out. Goodbye all.
Thanks for having us.